Mary Kay Zuravleff. Many, many exclamation points. I can't tell you what a thrill it is to be introducing Mary Kay this evening. She's one of my favorite authors and someone I've admired since I read her first novel, A Frequency of Souls, and thought, who is this woman who seems to possess both a left and right brain, who can write about things scientific so eloquently, and who, as Cheryl Strayed might say, writes like a mother effing you-know-what. I'm happy to say I've gotten to know Mary Kay over the years, and we've become good friends, so the opportunity to introduce her is surely one of the finest perks of my job. Man Alive is the story of events set in motion when psychiatrist Owen Lerner is hit by a bolt of lightning while feeding the parking meter during a vacation at the Delaware shore, which changes his personality and alters the dynamic of his family of 5. It's smart, funny, it's absolutely exuberant, and it's set right here. I'm sure you saw the rave review in yesterday's Washington Post, which included included a sentence that's as good as it gets. Above all, this is a family novel for smart people. The smarter you are, the better you'll like Man Alive. On that joyful note, please help me welcome Mary Kay Zuravleff.
A big smooch for Susan, whom I adore, and whose novels you should also read. That I love that line in Carolyn C. I love every line in Carolyn C.'s review, but it has a funny ring. There are people here from where I went to school my freshman year in college at Rice University, where they sell a bumper sticker in the bookstore that says, "I go to Rice, I must be smart." And my brother also went there ahead of me, and when I went to visit, I said, "Look at this book, this bumper sticker." And he said, "Oh, yeah, don't get that. Only the idiots get that." So when I read that line, I liked that line, but it harkened back. I think that the person who delivered my children is here. The person who taught my children is here. I mean, this is like my heart and brain trust. The people on my street, the people. I mean, I love all of you. And when people write about Washington as sort of competitive or cold or not unhelpful to each other or ungenerous, I think, do you know these people? Do you know any of these people? And you should, if you don't know the person on your left or your right, you should introduce yourself, because this is a pretty spectacular room. I am unbelievably delighted to be here, and in sort of the corollary to thinking that I know everyone, I was at Giant the other day, and this lovely Indian woman was coming right at me. And she was coming for me. She had a big smile on her face, and so I was thinking, okay, Merch, Deal, St. Anselm's, Waldorf, Chevy Chase Presbyterian, Jocelyn Street. I was going through them all. Yoga, is it the bank? Is it the... And she said, hello, and I said, hi. And she said, I believe we've switched baskets. So sure enough, I looked down and there was this cabbage in there. I said, how did that get in here? And I gave her basket, and then a couple rows later, she was contemplating something. I said, just throw it in here. And I thought, I'm going to give her a postcard and invite her to this reading before I'm out of here. All right. You came to be read to, so I'm going to read. And then I'm going to take questions, and I was thinking how people ask me a lot of times where the ideas come from, and I had this great idea today. There's always that sort of spooky moment where people ask the first question, and I thought I could get over that by just starting to ask you guys questions. Has that ever happened? Where'd you get those sandals? And so if there aren't questions, I'm going to turn the tables on you. Susan gave the whole plot away, so I don't really have to tell you what the... I'm going to read from the very beginning, because this is the very first reading. And I'm just going to take it from the top, and that way I don't have to give you any explanation. Everyone deserves a vacation from himself, Owen Lerner thinks on the last day of his. He's convinced that spending 3 weeks at their beach house each summer makes him a better doctor and a better parent, if not a snappier dresser. Early every morning, face flushed with a good night's sleep, the sun lifts itself out of the ocean and travels across the summer sky, hanging out even as it warms the sand. Through such measured leisure, Owen catches up on his medical journals as well as his sleep. But he lets himself go, too. A year's worth of bacon and booze packed into 3 weeks at the Delaware shore. This evening he is sporting the baggy shorts and soft rubber sandals he only ever wears at Rehoboth. He's missed a button on his lurid Hawaiian shirt so that the excess shirt tail hangs over his belly like a pennant, catching the wind the way a ship's flag might. Reaching beneath this flap, he fishes in his pants pocket for meter change and comes up with an inch of quarters, lucky strike, as if he's snagged a tuna from one of those monster fishing boats. First, a parking place on Riho Ave in August at dinner time, and now quarters galore. Nostalgia triggers the vertigo Owen has come to expect on the last day of vacation, when he's looking to the past and the future. Hard to believe that the twins, who resemble surfers from old beach movies, will be juniors in college, or that his baby girl is 16. Hard to believe it's 2008. They've been coming here since the boys were born, back when the boardwalk was low-budget, greasy fun. Used to be he could nickel and dime his way through August, springing for a waxed paper bag of saltwater taffy, or throwing pitches in the arcade to win Brooke a stuffed dolphin. He remembers Tony as barely clothed. She wore gauze sundresses that were nearly as insubstantial as their house, which was a mere shack in the sand then, tar paper applauding the ocean breeze. As Owen looks forward, his fistful of quarters brings to mind the patients waiting for him on the other side of vacation. Try as they may, his kids cannot play well with others. And the only rule they understand is that whatever they enjoy will inevitably be taken away. His beach reading this summer has included a number of promising drug studies for his practice. And as he counts the meter fare, he's also mentally mixing meds to alleviate anxiety and boost executive functioning. Owen had felt the tide changing from vacation to vocation an hour or so earlier, while taking a shower to sluice off the day's sand and sunscreen. Upstairs, between toweling off and getting dressed, he'd lunged for his blinking cell phone in spite of himself. Outgoing message be damned, mothers filled his voicemail with their requests, listing the vegetable soup of disorders ladled out to their children: ADD, ADHD, OCD, ODD, PDD, SID. He was still standing there naked, except for his glasses and cell phone, when Tony, lovely Tony, strolled in from her bath. "Stripped to the essentials, I see," she said. She dropped her own towel to the floor and began dressing, unceremoniously stepping into plain cotton underpants as if they shared a locker room rather than an entire life. Although he clamshelled the phone, she had waved him off. "Don't let me get between you and new clients. We're supposed to stay away from the boys' college fund until the market has time to recover." "But they're in college now," he'd said. "Them's the breaks," she'd shrugged. "As for us, it's a good thing Dr. Lerner's in demand." Now, Owen drops a coin into the meter slot, which adds a paltry 7 minutes. And I'll just say that this book had to be set in 2008 because there are no more meters there anymore. And a second coin gives them only another 8, returning him to summers when a quarter bought much more. This last day on the beach has been a pleasant one, overcast but no rain, which makes for easier reading, and in general, a less beaten down feeling, as if beach life were an ordeal, which it isn't. But after a bleached white sunny day, occasionally riding the waves with the kids or shoveling sand, the first beer can pull him under. His itchy beard brings to mind the trim he'll get once he's home. Maybe he'll ask for a goatee this time, aiming for the fleshy Freud look. More likely, he'll be mistaken for a slender Santa. "Behold, people," Brooke points out the roiling clouds that have moved in since they left. "I'm glad we're finished with our heliolatry." "Verily," Will agrees. "And isn't the thunder vociferous?" Owen's not sure if Will is actually helping Brooke with her test prep, or if he just enjoys releasing words like viruses into his little sister's vocabulary. "That language," Tony complains, but she laughs when Will says, "Yeah, what the flux?" because that's her line. She looks at Owen over the top of her sunglasses and then raises her eyes toward the greenish sky. "We should have made do at home. We threw away so much food." Ricky says, "We ran out of ketchup." And the rest of them concur. No ketchup, no dinner. Clouds flash their lights across the horizon before ramming into one another, and the resulting collision rumbles across the sky. Brooke cups her hand around her ear. "It's a total cacography." When the boys don't respond, she ventures, "Harsh? Awful sound?" "You mean cacophony." Smugness deepens Ricky's dimple. "Cacography is awful handwriting." Will says, "Like Dad's, right, old man?" "Occupational hazard," Owen says. Although he should feed the meter and get his family inside already, it's worth spending a few of the minutes he's bought listening to the kids. Will says, to remember cacography, think dadography. That's your mnemonic, Brooksy. Use it in a sentence, Ricky is saying. Dad's cryptic scrivening, his crapulous scrawl, is cacographic. Brooke looks sideways to make sure he isn't annoyed. He isn't. Family dynamics fall in a light sprinkle around Owen, who considers it healthy that they've united to mock their father. His motto, which he inherited from his mentor, is, "The art of family life is to not take it personally." Judging from his reading stack, the money these days is on brain imaging, which can pinpoint the very nerve cells that tackle the word cacography. He wonders what part of the brain recognizes sarcasm. What sector distinguishes laughing at from laughing with? I wish you'd put on more clothes, Tony says to Brooke, tapping her on the rump. Emblazoned across her tiny shorts for some reason is the word vixen. How about more glasses, Mom? Don't tempt me, Tony says. In addition to the shades she is wearing, her regular glasses squat on top of her head, and reading specs suspended from a chain around her neck rest on her chest as if her breasts might be called upon to read fine print. Reaching into her bag, she tugs a fringed corner into an arm-length span of fabric, and she pulls a second and third time until she has drawn out a shimmery red square that she wraps around Brooke's slight hips as the wind tries to undo her work, lifting the fringe to reveal their daughter's branded backside. The sarong Tony fashions takes Brooke past jaded teen to alluring island girl. Owen says, that's worse. Now she looks like a Tahitian maiden, and so Brooke leaves it on. Tony is lassoing her own hair into a hybrid bun ponytail. She says, I hope it's raining at home. Our yard is probably straw by now. Tinder, Brooke pitches. Kindling, Will says, and then Ricky, tender kindling, loco foco. Owen is oddly satisfied when Will gives his brother's shoulder a shove. You're loco foco, he says. Loco foco is a safety match, Ricky says. Obviously, your test scores didn't get you into Penn. At least Mom likes me, Will says. And he lifts one foot onto a tall bike rack, effortlessly stepping up and climbing the 3-foot rise as if it were a single stair. He walks along the rack's steel spine, which is slick and crisscrossed with handlebars, prompting Ricky to get on at the far end. They start horsing around, grown boys still trying to knock each other off balance. Must we? Tony asks. Apparently we must. In the morning, they'll close up the beach house, handing bundle after bundle like a fire brigade down the line to Owen, who's in charge of fitting everything into or on top of the van, including what they don't want to leave for renters or lock in the shed. But first, dinner. A moment ago, as Owen had slipped 2 quarters into the meter's slot, his fingertips had touched the satiny metal, still sun-toasted despite coming under the thunderhead's shadow. Now he deftly thumbs a coin from his palm to between his thumb and forefinger, a learned skill that has become almost autonomic. With pay phones being phased out, or taking only phone cards, with jukeboxes demanding dollar bills, what is left but parking meters to oblige such dexterity? If he gave Brooke a few quarters, would she cup them in her palm, fishing around with her other hand to pluck out individual coins? Are there deft maneuvers she or the boys have developed via mousing or texting that have blazed neurological shortcuts in their brains? As Owen thinks about internal wiring, he hears a loud buzz, an intensifying hum zeroing in on him. He figures the noise for a beach plane trailing a happy hour proclamation and questions the wisdom of flying one of those 2-seaters through flashing clouds. All of this is happening as he touches serrated edge of quarter to smooth slot of parking meter, the barest of contact, and he is, literally, blown away. His first reaction is, that parking meter packs a wallop. Of course, he cannot understand inside the flash that he is being struck by lightning. It's more like stepping off the high dive and then plummeting into a hot spotlight of water. Neither inhaling nor exhaling, Owen feels heavy pressure on his ribs and within his sinuses. Both his heart and ears yearn to rupture, while his arms and legs flail spasmodically, not in a swimming groove. More like a believer shot full of God, some maniac at a revival, compelled to twitch and moan in languages not yet discovered before plunging into a baptismal font. He is white-hot as well as deeply quenched by the singed, syrupy fluid of his surround. Water magnifies, lubricates, cleanses, and conducts, all of which is the case here. Water flows, and Owen rides the torrent everywhere at once, having been granted infinite perspective. He is looking down at his body, which isn't actually in water but is writhing on the sidewalk, his shirt ripped open and his white underbelly jiggling away. And then he is eye to eye with his remaining quarters, which are suspended midair in the unlikely shape of a bell curve, until one is picked off by a pair of sunglasses flying or flung through space. Next he is looking to the horizon, across the parking lot, over the boardwalk to the beach, all the way to the surf, which has picked up height and mass since they broke camp an hour ago, lugging their umbrella and beach chairs as well as the sodden, gritty towels back to the house, where he took his last outdoor shower of the season. Then he is staring straight up into the sky, from somewhere up in the sky, shimmering with the crackling clouds and bright static that have knocked him off his feet. Up among the ether, everything is so fucking clear, as if he's viewing his life through the Hubble telescope. He has never distinguished such vivid shades of gray. From the thundercloud to the sidewalks, to the gum stains irregularly blotting the sidewalk beneath Tony's flaking silver sandals. Her chipped red toenails are an eye-popping contrast. He clearly sees Will's tenderness as well as his vulnerability, along with the long dent across the van's sliding door from his run-in with the principal's Prius. Brooke's strawberry birthmark shines forth, as does her skeptical squint. And he can detect the gap returning to Ricky's front teeth because he stopped wearing his retainer. How can there be a light in which his banal life is so complex and invigorating? They are but an urban, suburban family who spend money like water, and who each go about doing mostly what is expected of them. And yet they are sublime, and he loves them to the point of pain. Like the space telescope, Owen is privileged with a view of our very origins. He is especially riveted by the formation of his family planet. Their connection, each to the other, his to them, and his to the universe, is mystical and mind-blowing. That he and Tony merged in pleasure, their combined emanations carrying all that was required to make three sentient beings, blows his mind anew. It is bliss, pure bliss. And though he's aware that he isn't breathing, he has the scent of barbecue in his nostrils. Hickory smoked, well-marbled meat, with bourbon and mango spiked sauce, caramelized by intense heat. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Gary.
In your research on what happens when people get hit by lightning, were there cases in which people said it changed my life, or was that more or less your invention here?
Both. There was an article by Oliver Sacks in the New Yorker about a man who is a doctor, a surgeon, and he was struck by lightning, and he heard piano compositions, and he, learned how to play the piano, learned how to compose music, left his wife and family, the whole 9 yards, and maybe he's here tonight. So I hope not. But this is both an answer to your question and also how the brain works. I mean, I just closed the magazine and I just thought, a pediatric psychopharmacologist is struck by lightning. I was just sort of playing. It was just a riff on the story. And then as I researched it, and I started writing the story, and then you start researching to sort of fit what you need to know. And what was so wonderful about what picks you and what you pick is that, in fact, people who survive lightning strikes have all those symptoms that he would have been treating. So they have ADD and ADHD and post-traumatic stress, and they're easily alarmed, and they smell things, and they're fried. And it's so, we're all electrical. I have this electricity obsession, which many of you know about. Can't stay away from it. It's like the fork in the socket or something. I can't stop. Maybe the next book won't be about electricity, but I don't guarantee it. So that just fascinated me that, I could have altered the book's direction to go there, but there I was already. So some people talk about their lives are never the same and they are tremendously damaged from it. And some people talk about it. Nobody really talks about it as a transcendental experience. So that's why I wrote this book.
How do you see the connective tissue between your novels? I mean, when you think about the three of them.
Yeah, I think that I start out, this is so completely different. I am the kind of writer who writes a completely different book. Look at me. I am. And then I get about 2/3 of the way through, and darn it if I don't have the group of people who are trying to get the spaceship off the ground, and it's the exact same sort of, maybe all books are about this, but it's that same culmination of I create a congregation, and then they all have to congregate, and it's some group effort. And so my first novel was about refrigerator designers, and a woman who believes that there is perhaps, if we're all electricity, that life after death might exist on old radios just to the left of National Public Radio is where she's looking, and radio waves. So, and then the second novel is about an Asian art museum. So see, this seems really different, but they're not. The connective tissue is about who we are as people and who we are to each other. And each book starts with a question. So the question for this book is, how much are you allowed to change and still stay in your family unless you don't want to be in that family anymore, unless you actually want to step outside of that web? I mean, I describe it as sort of an ecosystem. And so his delight in his strike is not how they feel, the rest of the crew feels about it. And I won't give anything else away. No spoilers. Hi.
Hi, Mary Kay.
Hi, Diane.
How hard is it to find the right words? And how do you find all those fabulous words?
Have my thesaurus. My son had installed on the computer those words, just vocabulary words that scroll across the screen when you don't work quickly enough. And I don't work quickly enough. So a lot of those are worked into the words that Brooke is drilling for her PSAT. But there's rhythm, there's flavor, if you knew how many times I changed the words, you might not think of me as talented. I mean, it's just, you know, I can type 100 words a minute, but I can write 1 word a day. It's just ridiculous. And so then you revisit it, and if you've taken one sentence out, the whole thing upends itself. And there was a lot of what I hoped was very fluid, and then when I returned to it, it was taking way too long. This man has been struck by lightning. He needs to be thrown into the air, and so that rhythm is reflected in every word. I mean, I don't want to sound too precious, but I'm pretty precious about the words. If not the words, what? You know, there's a great Marie Howe poem that is kind of my mantra at the end of it, and it's called the Meadow, and it's about how every spring the meadow has to remember how to recreate itself. What goes here, and where do the horses eat the clover? And the end of that poem is, bedeviled human, your plight in waking is to choose from the words that just now sleep on your tongue, and know that tangled among them and terribly new is the sentence that can change your life. So, you know, that gives me chills now. Those aren't my words. And just that notion that every single day they're sort of in there, and you sort of have to draw them out and then put them back and draw them out and erase them and throw them out. I'll stop now. And then the years go by. In the movie, the calendar would go. Hi.
Mary Kay.
Hi, Donna.
Maybe a year ago, and it might have been longer, I can't even remember, you told me that you were going some great place out in Virginia or West Virginia that they opened up to writers, and you could sit in a cabin. And I remember, the one thing I remember you telling me about is one evening and you'd look out and you'd see the fireflies, you know, way off in the distance. But tell us what you were doing. What was your writing process?
I wrote big chunks of this book at VCCA, which is out near Sweetbriar College, where the women have vixen on their butts. They are the vixen. And the signs last time I was there said, "Think is the new pink." Yeah, you figure that out and tell me what that means. So I was across the street at this art colony, and when they accept you at an art colony, your time is your own. There's no classes, there's no critique, there's just meals. And you don't have to go to the meals if you don't want to, and nobody can bother you during the day, and you can go to dinner and then just go back to your studio, or sometimes there are readings if you want to go to them. And the worry when you're accepted at a place like that is, oh my God, I'll just sleep all day and I won't have any ideas, and everybody else will be really working hard. But in fact, sleep late. I mean, just lay in bed for 15 minutes. When do you get to do that? And look at fireflies. For 1 year I was there and I bought food for the birds, and then I was cataloging and drawing how many birds. I was making graphs of how many birds, and I thought, oh, look at me. I will find work to do that is not writing, even when I am on a mountaintop. The birds were happy, but I had to cut them off. So the goal is to be not distracted by your daily life, and amazing things happen when you can do that. It's a gift, and I'm very grateful to them. Your tax dollars are well spent.
Congratulations, first off. Awesome. Is there a favorite character you have out of all the books? I assume Owen is the leading character now, but who's your favorite character?
Oh, I love them all. I love them all. I mean, I talk about, I'm there in the basement with my little sock puppets. And the hard thing is to then bring harm to them. I mean, it wouldn't be a novel if, I love you too. And, okay, 300 pages of that. And so the drama of kneecapping them is, yeah, it's awful. It's awful. And it's also a challenge as I become, I hope, a better and better writer, to actually bring more pain and suffering onto my people. It's awful. And you really love them very much. So do I have a favorite? I'm extremely fond of Will. He just goes his way in this book. And people were asking me about different ages. Were different ages hard to write? They're not. I'll eavesdrop and take anybody's line. But Will, I would start writing him, and I could go for chapters and chapters and chapters. I kept thinking, you have to hear from somebody else. It's not Will's book. It's really not Will's book. But I could have hung out with him for a long time. Yeah. I'll tell you a VCCA story, which is oftentimes when I go to VCCA, the promise that I give my family is, and I haven't even thanked my family. Thank you. I'm sorry it took me this long to say that. But I often promise when I go to VCCA that I'm going to wrap it up this time. So I went to VCCA after Thanksgiving, maybe 2 years ago, and I was almost done. And I began to read the book, and it was too slow. He's supposed to be hit, and you're just supposed to take off. And I had the realization, the book was written in past tense, that it needed to be written in present tense. So I had an entire book in past tense. And you can't just search and replace ED. I have tried that, and it does not work. And I thought, I'll just do the first chapter, and I'll show it to my agent, and she'll tell me if this is really necessary. And I did the first chapter, and I thought, oh, this is not her decision. In fact, it has to be. So then I had to rewrite the whole book in present tense, because it had to be in present tense. Of course, after teaching for years and saying, don't write in present tense. So now that I've thanked my family, I have to show you this. I have a charm bracelet that my daughter made with charms based on the book. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? And I'm thinking, this is like a great business opportunity. She could make sort of mnemonic Cliff Notes bracelets. Wouldn't that be cool? So you'd be saying like, oh, Tale of Two Cities? Okay, we got the knitting needles. We got the... Wouldn't that be great? Your favorite book bracelets. We could sell them here. Get to work. This is how writing pays. You come up with jobs for everybody else. Is there anything else you've always wanted to know? Maureen, step up to the microphone. You have to go over there. If I have to be here, you have to be there.
Besides stealing great lines from your family, what other inspiration do you get from them, and then how do you keep from kind of revealing all, making it more anonymous in your books?
Oh, do you guys want to answer that? They have great lines. Well, the good news is, you've made someone who's not them. So, in fact, even when you appropriate one of their lines, it's going to somebody who's not them. But I don't think I can really answer that because I think of myself as not writing about them, and I hope they feel that way too. I hope you feel that way too. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Why did it have to be in present tense?
Well, it had to be in present tense for rhythm, and in past tense it was, I'll read you any sentence. Wow. So, everyone deserves a vacation from himself, Owen Lerner thought on the last day of his. He was convinced that spending 3 weeks at the beach house made him a better doctor. It's just, it's back there. And when he's hit by lightning, you have to be with him. And that's the challenge of present tense. Sometimes present tense slows things down because I am putting my foot down. I am following it by, it's like, how are you ever going to get there? And so it's just to say he walked into the room and now you're in past tense. But I needed, for empathetic reasons and for each person's traumatic reasons, I needed us, the reader, to be with them as it was happening. And it worked better. And it went faster. Instead of slowing it down, it made the book. So I do these different passes. When I think I'm almost done, I'll do a pass for smell. I'll do a pass for language. I'll do many passes for language. But I'll do a pass for one. Each character gets his or her own pass just to see the continuity of following that person through. I'll do a pass for pacing. So in that early pacing reading, I just thought, why is this going so slowly? I mean, Ache Carrillo says, know your verb tense so that you can command time. And that's what you're doing when you're writing. You're setting the clock and you're commanding the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I do all these graphs, which some people know about. I do these charts and flow charts and graphs and word counts. And when the glitch in Microsoft Word for Apple doesn't do a word count, it shuts off after, perhaps you don't know this, 99,999. It just goes blank. It drove me crazy. So then isn't that annoying? You know how to override it? Okay, good. You can teach me that later. This book is under 100,000 words because of that glitch. It's ridiculous, isn't it? But where is I would just say that I see systems, I see patterns. And there's a branch of family therapy that someone introduced me to that is about the trauma or not trauma, anything that was visited on the generation before you comes into your generation, whether you know it or not. So your mother was overly cautious with you, and her mother, it turns out, lost her first child, but didn't ever talk about it. And so she was very, freaked out, and that is passed on. And when someone was educating me about this, and I actually went to a couple lectures, they would look at me, and I every question I asked, I kept saying, "This is what a novelist does." How might this play out? What is if you step into this hole and break your leg? And I talk about this with my students all the time with characters. Every choice needs to have ramifications and needs to resonate. And these people are self-aware. And, if your one leg is shorter than the other and the bus, you're about to miss the bus, can you run for the bus? And if you run for the bus, are you going to fall? Are you going to stumble? And if you stumble, are you going to miss your daughter's wedding? Are you going to end up in the hospital and not go to Italy? I mean, every single choice that you've made, and it can sound very overdetermined. And the goal, as I'm reading it also, is to see, is that too heavy-handed? Every subplot, here's a little secret for you. Every subplot is the plot of the book. This is so in almost every novel. And the goal is for you not to feel beaten over the head by that. But, it's like circling the wagons. It's pattern after pattern. The first line, I'll talk about this endlessly. I have this theory of the DNA of the novel. The title is the whole book. The first line is the whole book. Every character is the whole book. And you don't want to feel like you're reading the book 100,000 words each word, but if you take any of those out, you could say, oh, I could recreate this entire novel from this first, I could reconstitute it from this first line. There's about 40 novelists in this room. So you could talk amongst yourselves as soon as we're... That's a good place to stop, don't you think? Thank you very, very, very much.